We gather in community to nourish souls, transform lives, and do justice. What an inspiring mission we have. What a grand purpose. What a sacred reason for this religious community to be. And that mission rose out of a set of values that this religious community has discerned are at our very core. Transcendence, community, courage, compassion, transformation. What glorious aspirations we share. Now, as you heard earlier, this is the time of the year where we're engaged in our stewardship campaign to ask folks for their financial pledges that will make living out those values and that mission possible next year. I have to tell you, one of your stewardship ministry co-chairs really wanted me to call this the Sermon on the Amount. I declined. I declined because I want to talk with you about more than just the amount. I want to think about the vision that those shared values call us toward, the dream that we step into every Sunday when we say together that mission, our sacred reason to be. But I do also want to acknowledge that we sometimes shy away from talking about money, especially in churches and especially during the worship service. And yet, a spiritual practice of generosity, a commitment toward responsible stewardship of this church and our religious community, that is a vital part of nourishing our own souls and transforming our own lives. We have inherited this church, our spiritual dream and vision, because of the generosity of our religious ancestors. And we have the opportunity to pass it on in an even more realized way to those who will follow us. And to me, there is something divine about that possibility. Now, our church, and all Unitarian Universalist, or UU churches for short, all UU churches are organized in a manner that is referred to as congregational polity. Polity just means how we organize and govern ourselves. Our congregational polity goes all the way back to 1648 and a written set of promises, or a covenant, that a group of our predecessor churches made to one another, called the Cambridge Platform. Briefly then, congregational polity, as established by the Cambridge Platform, means that we're a group of associated churches that support and work with one another so that we can all more greatly live out our UU faith. And each church pays into a shared administrative body called the Unitarian Universalist Association, or UUA. The UUA provides many forms of important administrative and educational support to our churches and to our larger UU work in the world. But each of our UU churches are independent entities. We own our own property and we govern ourselves. There is no centralized denominational hierarchy that can tell us what to believe or what to do. All thanks to the Cambridge Platform. So maybe that is why my UU history professor in seminary had us sing out "Booyah" after any mention of the Cambridge Platform. Oops, booyah! Oh, now you know we have to do this together now, don't you? Come on, Susan, come help lead us. You ready? The Cambridge Platform. Booyah! The Cambridge Platform. Booyah! The Cambridge Platform. Booyah! Thank you for indulging my religious nerdiosity. Now, another result of congregational polity is that there is no centralized denominational body that provides us with overall financial support. The lion's share of the funding that allows this religious community to step into that dream together, live out our mission, our sacred purpose together, comes from the very members of this religious community. We have to fund ourselves also thanks to the Cambridge platform. Or booyah. It's okay, because I know that this congregation is up to it. You have the spiritual generosity to step into that dream together. I know this because I've watched you in so many ways carry this church forward. I've watched you pledge to a capital campaign that's going to result in creating a welcoming table for more and more folks who will join us in living out our sacred purpose together. And I have no doubt that with their strengthening presence among us, we will be able to step into our dreams even more fully. And I have experienced the spiritual generosity of this church very directly and very personally. Several years ago now, not that long after my spouse Wayne and I joined this church, and before I went to seminary, Wayne developed a disabling and potentially life-threatening condition called polymyositis. Polymyositis is likely an inherited condition wherein the immune system attacks your body's own muscles. For Wayne, it caused a number of symptoms and problems, including weakening his leg muscles to the point where it was difficult for him to walk. Members of this church brought us food. They offered to take Wayne to his various medical appointments. One member came by and gave Wayne 2 beautiful walking canes that church member had hand-carved himself. I can't begin to tell you how much all of that helped. I was working as a nonprofit executive director at the time, a job that requires well over 40 hours a week, and I was struggling to balance that with my need to be with Wayne, and the help that the members of this church gave us made such a real difference. Plus, I don't mind telling you, I was terrified. My heart was hurting over seeing what the disease was doing to Wayne and the fear that it might take him from me. Just knowing that this church was holding us in prayers and love helped us to make it through that time. Now, I want you to know that Wayne is doing much better now. The polymyositis is in remission, and he's even seeing a fitness trainer at a gym doing exercises people half his age can't do. So, good for him. And in my time at this church, and especially now as one of your ministers, I have witnessed this religious community do the same for so many others, helping people battle through fighting cancer and other serious illnesses, holding families and loved ones through the deaths of ones that they loved, loving and supporting one another through any number of life's challenges and sorrows, and also celebrating life's joys together. And that's only some of the spiritual generosity of this religious community, and it's that occurs within these church walls. But as you heard Brendan say, you also take that generosity out into our community and our world in so many ways. We have folks working for justice by engaging in anti-racism activities, fighting for LGBTQ rights, the rights and dignity of the disabled, women's rights, immigration justice, and so much more. We have a group of real leaders for the Austin area on the environment and climate change. This congregation offered sanctuary to Sulma Franco and helped her avoid deportation to her home country of Guatemala, where she would have faced persecution and likely death. That's the difference that gathering in community to nourish souls, transform lives, and do justice can make. It changes lives for the better. Sometimes it even saves a life. And I believe it changes our own lives by helping us to be better people. People living more fulfilling, ethical lives and who are moved to work for justice in our community and our world. What an inspiring mission. What a grand purpose. What a sacred reason to be. And the thing is, I could go on. I've only scratched the surface of all the many ways in which this congregation is demonstrating your spiritual generosity by living out that mission. In all, we have over 80 ministries and programs. I want to change gears just slightly now, though, and talk about the resilience and spiritual generosity this religious community has demonstrated over just the past several months, while our senior minister, Meg, has had to be out so that she could heal in recovery from the serious infection she had developed. First, I cannot adequately voice for you how much the love and support so many of you have expressed to Meg and Kaya has meant to them. You helped lift their spirits at a time when it would have been so easy to fall into despair. And all the while, you kept that mission alive. For instance, over these past few months, a dedicated group of church leaders have expanded our efforts on anti-racism, multiculturalism, and dismantling the dominance of white norms, both in the church and by working with other groups out in the community. Now, we can and must do more. We must expand this work, but we have an ever-strengthening base now upon which to build. And during this time, so many of you worked in so many ways as we battled the many harmful bills that came up in the Texas legislature. We weren't always able to stop some of them, but there were very important victories. And just this last Wednesday, one of the worst of them got halted by a judge, the so-called Show Me Your Papers anti-immigrant, anti-sanctuary city law. And over the past few months, you've kept this religious community growing in so many ways. Our building committee has kept the planning and permitting process going, and a dedicated group of volunteers did a set of canvassing visits for our capital campaign to invite relatively new members to participate. And those newer members responded generously. Many of them have now become canvassers themselves. And speaking of new members, 46 great folks joined this church between January and July of this year. That is more than joined in all of 2016. Sunday attendance has also been up, as has attendance in our faith development classes for our children and youth. And if you didn't get to see the service that our high school youth did in May, let me tell you, it was extraordinarily moving. And it was great evidence that our folks that work with our children and youth are doing amazing and holy work. Rumor even has it that a couple of our youth are thinking about going to UU seminary. The greatest number of members from this church ever to attend our Unitarian Universalist Annual General Assembly did so this past June. And under the leadership of our great denominational affairs chair, our participation in our larger UU faith is growing. And so many of you have worked in so many ways to continue and expand our social justice and interfaith efforts this year. We formed a new women's alliance under the leadership of a founding chair. Then recently, this congregation has again offered sanctuary to an immigrant that faces potentially life-threatening consequences without it. Over the past week, I've been so heartened by the generosity shown across Texas and across our country to offer support and aid to people affected by Hurricane Harvey. I've been especially touched by the responses of our local UU churches, and most especially the folks in this church, because once again, terrific leadership has stepped up from among you, and they are today providing us ways to donate tangible items and or make financial contributions to folks who have been affected by the hurricane. You can also contribute to help our UU churches that were damaged by the storm. So go by the social action table in the gallery after the service to find out more. These are just a few of the ways you have kept our mission alive and the spiritual generosity of this religious community flowing over the past few months while Meg has had to be away. Now, I tell you all of this because that is not what so often happens when a well-loved minister is unexpectedly absent for an extended period due to serious illness. What more often happens in churches in that situation is that much of what I have just described grinds to a halt. Anxieties rise, tempers flare, attendance and new member growth fall. And very often, the poor soul who steps in as the acting senior minister under such circumstances is treated in a way that, let's just say, is not very like the compassion, support, and generous spirit with which you all have treated me. And though, of course, I would not have had it happen under these circumstances, that compassion and support you have all given me has helped me to learn and to grow as a minister. You have helped my soul to thrive, and for that I am and always will be extraordinarily grateful. The resilience, compassion, generosity of spirit, and commitment to our missions and ministry this religious community has demonstrated during this time is nothing short of amazing. You already are stepping into the dream together. So then our stewardship campaign is just the way we provide ourselves with the resources to keep that going, to keep that dream going next year. And I'm so thrilled to tell you that members of this church have already pledged $300,000 toward 2018, many of them raising their pledges by significant amounts, some almost doubling them. Now, I know that not everyone has the circumstances that will allow them to do that, so here is that sermon on the amount after all. In this church, what we ask our folks pledge is an amount that is meaningful and significant to you within your means. We're hoping to increase our pledges by around 5% overall. Oh, and we also ask that you please be nice to your canvassers when they contact you. They're a wonderful group of church volunteers who we can never thank enough, and we need them. Transcendence, community, courage, compassion, transformation. What a compelling set of values this religious community shares. We gather in community to nourish souls, transform lives, and do justice. What a sacred reason to be. May we keep this dream of this, our beloved religious community, alive and growing by continuing to support ourselves as we have done, going all the way back to the Cambridge platform. Booyah! And amen. Now please